For 32 years, I believed I was the broken one. I accepted the label of the difficult daughter while my sister, Megan, played the perfect golden child. That illusion shattered on a quiet Tuesday evening when Megan accidentally sent me a single video file. It was a screen recording of a secret group chat I was never meant to see, and in it, I watched my entire family laughing as they plotted to destroy my life for profit. The rain against the window pane of my third-floor apartment in Brookdale had a rhythm that usually soothed me. It was a steady, percussive hum that separated the warmth of my living room from the gray, mid-sized city outside. I had spent the last 5 years cultivating this space, curating a sanctuary that felt nothing like the chaotic, judgmental environment I had grown up in. Here, the bookshelves were organized by color. The throw pillows were exactly where I wanted them, and the silence was a choice, not a punishment. I was 32 years old. To the outside world, and specifically to the partners at the marketing firm where I worked as a senior analyst, I was Audrey Griffin competent, detail-oriented, and reliable. I spent my days sifting through consumer data, finding narrative threads in spreadsheets that looked like noise to everyone else. My boss, David, had told me just last week that I had a gift for seeing the invisible connections between things. It was a skill I had honed out of necessity. Though I rarely admitted that to anyone, when you grow up walking on eggshells, you learn to read the air pressure in a room before you even cross the threshold. My circle of friends here was small, a deliberate curation of people who understood boundaries. There was Jasmine, who sat 2 desks away from me and had a laugh that could crack a ceiling, and a few others from my yoga studio. They knew the broad strokes of my life. They knew that I didn't go home for every holiday. They knew that when my phone buzzed with certain ringtones, my shoulders would instinctively rise toward my ears. They knew my family was complicated, but they didn't know the texture of it. They didn't know how it felt to be the piece of a puzzle that had been jammed into the wrong spot, edges bent and fraying, just to keep the picture looking whole. It was Friday night. The week had been a marathon of client meetings and late-night data crunches, and I had been looking forward to this specific moment for 48 hours. I had a glass of red wine breathing on the coffee table, a new documentary queued up on the television, and zero intention of speaking to another human being until Saturday morning. Then, my phone buzzed. It vibrated against the wooden coaster, a harsh, intrusive sound that made me wince. I glanced at the screen. It was a notification from Griffin Updates, the group chat that included my parents, Charles and Linda, my younger sister, Megan, her husband, Tyler, and me. I ignored it. I knew exactly what it would be. It was always a highlight reel of Megan's life. Photos of my niece and nephew, Liam and Sophie, doing something arguably adorable. A picture of the dinner Megan had cooked, perfectly plated, a shot of the sunset from their deck in the suburbs. My role in this chat was to offer the requisite emojis: hearts, thumbs up, shocked faces to validate their happiness. If I took too long to respond, I would get a separate text from my mother asking if I was okay, which was code for asking why I was being rude. I took a sip of wine and tried to focus on the television. But the phone buzzed again, and again, a flurry of messages. I sighed, pausing the documentary. The silence rushed back into the room, heavy and expectant. I picked up the phone, bracing myself for the emotional labor of being a Griffin. The chat was filled with photos of a new play set in Megan's backyard. Look at Sophie on the slide my mother had typed. Tyler spent all afternoon building it, Megan added. Great job. Ty, my father, chimed in. I typed out a generic response. Looks great. The kids must love it. I set the phone down. Face down this time. It wasn't that I didn't love my niece and nephew. I adored them. But every interaction with my family felt like I was watching a play from the back row of the theater, while they were all on stage, illuminated by a spotlight that I was explicitly excluded from. My mind drifted back to Thanksgiving. Just 2 months ago, it had been the last time we were all in the same room. I had driven 2 hours to their house in Ridgewood, the upscale suburb where my parents still lived, and where Megan had bought a house just 10 minutes away. I had arrived bearing a bottle of expensive wine and a dessert from a bakery that had been featured in a national magazine, within 20 minutes of walking through the door. The dynamic had established itself. I was in the kitchen, helping my mother chop vegetables, while Megan sat at the island with a glass of wine, recounting a story about the PTA, Audrey. "You are cutting those too thick," my mother had said, taking the knife from my hand without asking. "Here, let me do it. You always rush things." I had stood there, my hands empty, feeling that familiar regression. I was a senior analyst. I managed budgets of over $50,000 a month. But in this kitchen, I was the incompetent child. Later, at dinner, the conversation had turned to milestones. Megan and Tyler were thinking about a third child. My parents were ecstatic, discussing nursery themes and savings bonds. Then, the attention had shifted to me. "Any nice men in Brookdale?" Audrey, my Aunt Grace, had asked. She was my father's sister, a woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and viewed singledom as a terminal illness. "I am focusing on work right now," I had said, keeping my voice light. "I actually just won an award at the firm, the Regional Strategy Award. It came with a bonus." There had been a pause, a beat of silence that stretched just a little too long. "That is nice, honey," my mother had said, her eyes already drifting back to the turkey. "Oh, did we tell you Megan and Tyler just traded in the sedan for that new SUV? The one with the heated seats in the back. It is a game changer for carpool." Megan had beamed. "You should see the safety rating. Safety is so important." My father had agreed, nodding solemnly. "Smart buy. Tyler, my award, my months of overtime, my professional recognition, it had all evaporated, displaced by the sheet metal of a new car. When I had gone quiet for the rest of the meal, focusing on my food, my mother had pulled me aside later while we were clearing the table. "You seem moody." "Audrey," she had whispered, her voice laced with that performative concern that drove me crazy. "Try not to bring that energy around the kids. You know how sensitive you can be. We just want everyone to have a good time." "I am not moody," I had said, perhaps a little too sharply. "I am just tired." "There you go," she had sighed, shaking her head, always so defensive. "You hold on to grudges. Audrey, it is not healthy." I shook the memory off, bringing myself back to my apartment, to the rain, to the safety of my Friday night. That was the narrative. Megan was the glue, the sunny, capable mother who held the family together. I was the volatile element, the one who required handling, the one who was too emotional. Megan was an artist at this. She never insulted me directly. She would just retell stories. She would bring up the time I cried at my college graduation, framing it as a meltdown rather than a reaction to the fact that my boyfriend at the time had dumped me the morning of the ceremony. She would laugh about how I could not handle the family beach trip 3 years ago, leaving out the part where they had changed the dates last minute, forcing me to miss a non-refundable vacation I had booked for myself, and then called me selfish for being upset. She was the polished stone, and I was the jagged rock they kept tripping over. I took another long sip of wine, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. I was not going to let them ruin my night. I was going to watch my documentary. I was going to sleep in. I was going to enjoy my life. My phone lit up again. I groaned, reaching for it, ready to mute the group chat entirely. But when I looked at the screen, it wasn't a group message. It was a direct text from Megan. There was no text in the bubble, just a file attachment. "A video," I frowned. Usually, Megan captioned her videos with something like, "You have to see this," or "Liam is hilarious." This was just the file. Sent in a vacuum. I sat up straighter, resting the wine glass on the table. My first thought was that it was a butt dial, or rather, a pocket send, but videos took effort to attach. My second thought was that it was something cute that she was too busy to caption. Maybe the baby had taken her first steps. I tapped the screen. The video player opened. It was vertical, clearly a screen recording from a phone. The interface looked like a messaging app, but not the one we used for the family chat. The background wallpaper was different, a beige, textured pattern I didn't recognize. At the top of the screen, the group name was visible, Griffin Inner Circle. I stared at the name, Inner Circle. Below the name were the profile icons of the members. I recognized them instantly. My mother's photo was a flower from her garden. My father's was a picture of his boat. Tyler's was him in sunglasses. Aunt Grace's was her cat. And Megan's was a professional headshot. There was no icon for me. My heart did a strange, stuttering flip in my chest. Inner circle. The name implied an outer circle. And I knew, with a sinking certainty, that I was the only person standing in it. The video was silent for the first second. And then I heard Megan's voice. It was clear, close to the microphone, slightly hushed, as if she were hiding in a bathroom or a closet. "Okay, so here is how you screen record receipts. Mom," Megan's voice said. It was her helpful, patient voice, the one she used when explaining technology to our parents. "You just pull down the menu like this. Hit the record button, and then you can scroll through the chat. That way, if she deletes anything, we still have proof. I am going to scroll up so you can see the history with Tyler and Aunt Grace." My stomach turned to ice. She wasn't recording a video of her kids. She was recording a tutorial on how to document evidence, and she had sent it to the wrong person. She had meant to send this to our mother, on the screen. Megan's thumb began to scroll. The messages flew by, then slowed down as she steadied the scroll to capture specific blocks of text. I brought the phone closer to my face, my breath catching in my throat. I read the timestamps. They were recent. Yesterday, 2 days ago, last week. Megan. "Did you see her response to the Christmas invite? I will check my calendar. She is so dramatic. It is Christmas. What else does she have to do, Mom? I know. It is exhausting. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells every time I text her. She is just one meltdown away from a breakdown. Honestly, Aunt Grace. It is just like her father's sister. Linda, bad wiring. You have to be careful. Tyler. At least she lives 2 hours away. Imagine if she was local. We would never get a break." I felt a physical blow to my chest, as if someone had punched the air out of my lungs. They weren't just venting. They were analyzing me, dissecting me. Megan continued to scroll in the video, her voice humming absently in the background. "See, it captures everything, even the dates." The screen scrolled further back. "To a month ago, Mom. I am worried about the beach house trip next summer. If Audrey comes, she is going to want the master suite again because of her insomnia. Megan, she does not have insomnia. Mom, she just wants attention. Remember when she told me she was having panic attacks at work? I guarantee you that was just her way of trying to get out of the project she was failing at." I gasped, a raw, wounded sound in the empty apartment. I had told Megan about my anxiety in strict confidence. I had called her late one night, weeping, terrified because the pressure at work was mounting and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I had trusted her. I had thought she was listening as a sister. Instead, she had taken my vulnerability and served it up to the family as a punchline. Dad, she is her own worst enemy. She will self-sabotage eventually. She always does. Megan, exactly. That is why we have to be smart about this. The scrolling stopped for a moment, then resumed. Faster now, skipping over mundane logistics to get to a specific date. 3 weeks ago. Tyler, I spoke to Mr. Hanson at Brookfield Trust today. He says we need to get the documents in order before the end of the quarter. Dad, did you show him the examples, Megan? We have the emails from her sick days and the notes from when she blew up at Thanksgiving. Hanson agrees that it establishes a pattern. If we can prove a history of instability, we can argue that a direct disbursement would be irresponsible. Mom. I just do not want Grandpa's money to end up wasted. You know she would just blow it on therapy or some guru in Bali. Or some guy would take it from her. Megan, don't worry. Mom, the trust restructure will protect the assets. We just need to make sure the supplemental statement is watertight. If she is deemed a risk, the control stays with the executors, us. My hand was shaking so badly that the image on the screen blurred. Grandpa's money, my grandfather, Harold, had died 2 years ago. I had been told that the estate was tied up in probate, that it was complicated, that it would take years to settle. I had never pushed. I had trusted my father to handle it. They weren't just gossiping, they were plotting. They were actively building a legal case to steal my inheritance by painting me as mentally incompetent. The video continued. Megan's voice came back. Okay, and this is the document Tyler sent over. You just tap it to open. In the recording, Megan tapped a PDF file icon. It opened on her screen. The title was bold and centered, Supplemental Statement, Audrey Griffin. And there, right at the top of the legal document, was a photo of me. It wasn't a recent photo. It was my high school yearbook picture. I looked young, frizzy-haired, and anxious. It was a photo from the year I had struggled with an eating disorder, a year I had fought so hard to recover from. They had chosen it deliberately. It made me look frail. It made me look like a child. Under the photo, I saw bullet points. Incident: a verbal altercation at family gathering, Thanksgiving 2025. Incident B: reports of workplace volatility. Anonymous source: Incident C. History of psychological distress and medical dependence. The video cut off abruptly. The screen went black. I sat in the silence of my apartment. The phone clutched in my hand like a grenade that had already exploded. The rain was still beating against the glass, but I couldn't hear it anymore. All I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears. I tapped the screen. I hit replay. I needed to see it again. My brain was rejecting the information. It was trying to tell me that I had misunderstood, that this was a joke, a role-playing game, a misunderstanding. Families didn't do this. My family didn't do this. Sure, they were critical. Sure, they were cold. But this was predatory. I watched it again. I listened to Megan's voice, so casual, so helpful, explaining how to record the evidence of my destruction. She is one meltdown away from a breakdown. Examples of Audrey's instability. Grandpa's money doesn't end up wasted. The second viewing stripped away the shock and left something colder in its place. Clarity. For years, I had walked into rooms and felt like the punchline of a joke I hadn't heard. I had questioned my own memory. I had apologized for reacting to cruelty because they told me I was imagining it. I had spent thousands of dollars on therapy trying to fix the part of me that couldn't just get along with them. But I wasn't broken. I wasn't crazy. I was the target. I looked at the freeze frame of the PDF, at my own teenage face staring back at me from a document designed to erase my future. The Griffin Inner Circle wasn't just a chat group. It was a war room, and I was the enemy. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me, violent and sudden. I put the phone down on the table, careful not to crack the screen, and stood up. My legs felt numb. I walked to the window and pressed my forehead against the cold glass. Below me, the streetlights of Brookdale reflected in the puddles. Life was going on. People were driving home. Families were eating dinner. Behind me, on the coffee table, the phone screen went dark. I didn't cry. I thought I would collapse, sob, scream into a pillow, but the tears didn't come. Instead, a strange, high-frequency vibration started in my fingertips. It was the adrenaline of survival. They were going to present documents. They were meeting with Mr. Hansen. They were going to frame me as unstable to cut me out of my grandfather's legacy, a legacy he had told me, with his own voice, years ago, that he wanted me to have. I turned back to the room. My cozy, safe, quiet apartment suddenly felt like a bunker. I walked back to the phone. I picked it up. My hands were steady now. I didn't text back. I didn't call. I didn't delete the file. I pressed Save to Files. Then I sat down, picked up the remote, and turned off the TV. The apartment was silent. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. My voice sounded foreign, harder than it had an hour ago. Okay, the difficult one had just been handed the playbook, and for the first time in 32 years, I knew exactly what the game was. Sleep did not come as a reprieve. It came as a series of short, suffocating blackouts that lasted 20 minutes at a time, punctuated by the sensation of falling. When I finally dragged myself out of bed on Saturday morning, the sun was slicing through the blinds with a cheerfulness that felt personally offensive. My head throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache behind my eyes, the physical hangover of emotional shock. I sat on the edge of my mattress, my feet touching the cold hardwood floor, and for a moment, I waited for the feeling to pass. I waited for the rational part of my brain to wake up and tell me that I had exaggerated what I saw, that I had projected my own insecurities onto a harmless misunderstanding. But then the voices came back. They echoed in the quiet of my bedroom, clearer than they had been on the recording. "We just want to protect the family assets. She is one meltdown away from a breakdown. She will blow up if she finds out." The cruelty of it was precise. It wasn't just that they were talking about me, it was that they were scripting me. They had written a character named Audrey Griffin, a volatile, incompetent, fragile woman, and they were directing their lives around her, ensuring that the real me never had a chance to break character. I walked to the kitchen and made coffee, my movements mechanical. I didn't taste the dark roast as I swallowed it. I just needed the caffeine to sharpen the edges of my mind. I needed to see it again. I sat down at my small dining table and opened my laptop. My phone felt radioactive in my hand as I selected the video file Megan had sent me 12 hours ago. I hit share and airdropped it to my computer. Watching it on the phone had been intimate and shocking. Watching it on the 15-inch Retina display of my laptop felt like an autopsy. I opened the file in a video editing program I sometimes used for work presentations. I didn't need to edit it. I needed to control it. I needed to slow it down. I pressed play. Megan's voice filled the room, magnified by the laptop speakers. "Okay, so here's how you screen record receipts. Mom." I turned the volume down until it was just a murmur. I didn't need to hear her fake patient tone again. I needed to see what she had captured. I scrubbed through the timeline, frame by frame. The first time I watched it, I had been focused on the text messages, the words that tore me apart. Now, I looked at the periphery. I looked at the things Megan hadn't meant to show. The recording was a screen capture. But at the very beginning and very end of the iPhone's screen recording interface, there is often a split second of the background before the app fully maximizes, or in this case, there was a reflection. I paused at the 004 mark. The screen on the video was dark for a microsecond as an app loaded. In the black glass of the phone being recorded, there was a faint reflection of the room Megan was standing in. It wasn't her house. The lighting was too yellow. The wood paneling in the background too dark. It was my father's home office. I recognized the distinct wainscoting and the heavy oak bookshelf filled with encyclopedias that nobody had opened since 1995. Megan had been at my parents' house when she recorded this. They were all together. I advanced the video. The text messages scrolled by. I ignored the insults this time and looked at the background of the chat app. It was a custom wallpaper. I zoomed in. It was a photo of the four of them, Mom, Dad, Megan, and Tyler standing on the dock at the lake house. They were toasting with champagne glasses. I remembered that weekend. I had been told the plumbing at the cabin was broken, so nobody could go up. They had lied about the plumbing to have a Griffin Inner Circle summit. I felt a cold flush of heat rise up my neck, but I forced myself to keep watching. I scrubbed to the part where Megan opened the PDF, the supplemental statement. I paused it. I took a screenshot. I zoomed in on the edges of the document. It was a scanned document, not a digital native. That meant someone had printed it, signed it or marked it up, and scanned it back in. In the corner of the scan, captured by the high-resolution camera of the phone, I could see a sliver of the desk it had been sitting on. There were stacks of paper, thick, bound documents with blue covers, legal binders, and on the wall behind the desk, blurry but legible if I squinted, was my father's wall calendar. I pressed my face closer to the screen. It was the current month. The days were crossed off with thick black X marks up until yesterday, but there was one date in the future that wasn't crossed off. It was circled in red marker, heavily circled, February 7th, 2 weeks from now. I checked my own calendar. February 7th was a Wednesday, a random Wednesday. Why would the entire family be mobilized for a random Wednesday? The meeting with Mr. Hansen. Tyler had said in the chat, "We will present the documents." February 7th was the execution date. That was the day they were going to finalize whatever legal maneuver they had been cooking up to cut me out of my grandfather's trust. I sat back, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks before they made their move. If I hadn't seen this video, I would have been blindsided. I would have been walking around Brookdale, going to work, living my life, while they signed away my future in a conference room. The urge to react was sudden and violent. I grabbed my phone. My thumbs hovered over Megan's name. I wanted to hurt her. I wanted to shatter her carefully curated reality the way she had shattered mine. I started typing. I saw the video. Megan, I saw everything. You are a sociopath, and so are Mom and Dad. Do not ever speak to me again. I stared at the words. They felt good. They felt righteous. But then I heard my mother's voice in my head. Audrey is so dramatic. She flies off the handle. She is unstable. If I sent this text, I was doing exactly what they wanted. I was providing them with Exhibit A. Megan would screenshot my text, send it to the inner circle, and say, "See. She is spiraling. We are doing the right thing." I backspaced, erasing the anger. I tried sarcasm. Cute video. Meg. Nice to know the inner circle is so obsessed with me. Maybe get a hobby that does not involve fraud. I deleted that too. It sounded bitter. It sounded like I was hurt, and I didn't want them to know they could hurt me. I tried the high road. Megan, I saw the video you sent. I am deeply hurt that you would speak about me this way. I think we need some space. I stared at that one for a long time. It was the truth. But the truth was a currency my family didn't accept. If I sent this, Megan would call me immediately. She would cry. She would gaslight me. She would say I was misinterpreting things, that I was being sensitive, that they were just worried about me. She would spin me in circles until I was apologizing to her for spying on her private chat. I deleted the text. I set the phone down. The screen was black. Silence was the only weapon I had right now. They didn't know I knew, or rather, they didn't know what I knew. Megan had sent the video, but she hadn't realized her mistake yet. Or maybe she had, and she was waiting to see if I noticed. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Not yet. Monday morning at the office was a surreal experience. I put on my armor, a charcoal blazer, tailored trousers, and a coat of lipstick that was a shade brighter than I felt. I walked into the marketing firm, smiled at the receptionist, and poured myself a coffee in the break room. My body was present, but my mind was operating on a split track. One track was answering emails about Q1 projections. The other track was replaying the video loop of my high school photo attached to a legal document. At 10 o'clock, I had a campaign strategy meeting. We were launching a new initiative for a local healthcare network. My manager, David, stood at the whiteboard, uncapping a blue marker. "Okay, team," David said, his voice booming with Monday energy. "The client wants to focus on trust. That is the key word. Trust. We need to show that their providers are reliable, stable, and transparent." I nodded, taking notes. Reliable, stable, transparent. The words felt like little needles pricking my skin. "Audrey," David said, turning to me, "I want you to lead the data pull on patient demographics, but I need you to be meticulous with the documentation. We need a paper trail for every decision we make on this one. If the client asks for the rationale, we need to have the feedback loops documented." Documentation, feedback. The room seemed to tilt slightly to the left. The words triggered a memory I hadn't touched in 2 years. It was a visceral, sense memory that brought the smell of industrial floor cleaner and the taste of stale panic back into my mouth. 2 years ago, I had been up for a promotion. It was a role I had worked myself into the ground for team lead. I had the numbers. I had the client relationships. I had been practically guaranteed the spot by my previous supervisor. Then, a week before the announcement, I was called into HR, the HR representative. A woman named Karen, who always looked tired, had slid a piece of paper across the desk. It wasn't a formal write-up, she said. It was just a note to file. We received an anonymous complaint regarding your conduct. Karen had said gently, the source expressed concern about your emotional stability in high-pressure situations. There were mentions of volatility. I had been stunned. I had never raised my voice at work. I had never cried in a meeting. Who I had asked, my voice trembling. Who said that I cannot disclose that? Karen had said, but given the timing and the nature of the team lead role requiring significant stress management, we are going to hold off on the promotion for this cycle. We want to make sure you are supported. Audrey, maybe take advantage of the company wellness program. I had lost the promotion. I had spent the next 6 months paranoid, looking at my colleagues, wondering which one of them had stabbed me in the back. I had retreated into myself, becoming quieter, more withdrawn, which, ironically, probably made me look unstable. I stared at David's whiteboard, documentation, in the video, in the inner circle chat. I had seen a message from my mother dated around that same time 2 years ago. Mom, I am just so worried about her work stress. I hate to intervene, but maybe she needs a wake-up call before she takes on too much. And then a reply from Megan. Megan, don't worry. Mom, I handled it. I sent the email. It is better this way. She can't handle the pressure, and we can't have her losing her job entirely because she cracked. My pen snapped in my hand. A sharp crack echoed in the conference room. Ink bled onto my fingers. Audrey, David asked, pausing mid-sentence, everything okay? I looked down at the broken plastic in my hand. Yes, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Sorry, just a cheap pen. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't crazy. My family had sabotaged my career. They had sent an anonymous complaint to my HR department to my livelihood to stop me from getting promoted. Why? To keep me safe, or to keep me small, to make sure I didn't have the financial independence to walk away from them, or maybe, to build the very paper trail they were now using to disinherit me. See, even her employer thinks she's unstable. I felt like I was going to throw up. You are not eating your salad, Jasmine said. We were at our usual lunch spot, a bistro 2 blocks from the office. Jasmine was the only person at work I considered a real friend. She was sharp, cynical in the best way, and had a BS detector that was calibrated to NASA standards. I pushed a piece of kale around my bowl. I am not hungry. Jasmine put her fork down. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Okay, spill. You have been staring at the wall all morning. You broke a pen, and now you are desecrating a perfectly good Cobb salad. What is going on? Is it David? No, I said. I looked around the restaurant to make sure no one was close enough to hear. It is my family. Jasmine rolled her eyes. What did Megan do this time? Post a photo of you sleeping with your mouth open. She sent me a video, I said. By accident. It was Jasmine. It was a recording of a group chat I am not in. Jasmine leaned in, intrigued. Ooh, the tea. What were they saying? That you need a haircut? No, I said. I struggled to get the words out. My throat felt tight. They are trying to change my grandfather's will. They are building a legal case to prove I am mentally unstable so they can put my share of the inheritance into a trust that they control. And I took a breath. I think they sent the anonymous complaint to HR 2 years ago, the one that cost me the team lead spot. Jasmine's expression went from curious to horrified in a split second. She dropped her fork. Wait, stop. Are you serious? I saw the messages, I whispered. They were laughing about it. They were sharing documents. Jasmine, they have a file, a PDF called Supplemental Statement, Audrey Griffin. Jasmine sat in silence for a long moment. She looked at my face, searching for any sign that I was exaggerating. She didn't find one. That is evil, she said finally. Her voice was low and hard. That is not complicated family stuff. Audrey, that is succession-level evil. That is predatory. I don't know what to do, I admitted, my voice cracking. I wanted to text Megan and scream at her. I wanted to drive to my parents' house and burn it down, but I just froze. Good, Jasmine said firmly. She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was tight. Freezing is good. Freezing is safe. Do not text them. Do not call them. Do not scream. Why? I asked. They deserve it. Because if you scream, Jasmine said, you prove them right. If they are building a case that you are unstable, then giving them a rage text is just handing them the smoking gun. You need to be ice, Audrey. You need to be the coldest, calmest version of yourself that has ever existed. She let go of my hand and pulled out her phone. Did you save the video? Yes, on my laptop. Back it up, she commanded. Cloud, external hard drive, USB stick. Put it in 3 places. And don't just save the video, save everything. Emails, old texts, voicemails. If they are building a case, you need to build a bigger one. I felt like I was going crazy, I said, feeling the tears finally prick my eyes. For years, Jasmine, I thought I was just bad at being a daughter. You are not crazy, Jasmine said fiercely. You are under attack, and we are going to fight back. But first, you need to eat some protein. You look like you are going to pass out. And we cannot have you fainting at work. That goes in the unstable file. I managed a weak smile. She was right. That evening, I didn't go home immediately. I stayed at the office until everyone else had left. I needed the high-speed internet and the solitude. I logged into the HR portal. It was a sterile site, full of drop-down menus and PDF handbooks. I navigated to my employee file. I found the section labeled Performance Reviews Notes. There it was, dated October 14th, 2 years ago. Note to file. Anonymous complaint received regarding employee conduct. I opened the video file on my phone again. I scrolled to the chat history. I found the exchange between Megan and my mother. Megan, don't worry. Mom, I handled it. I sent the email. The date on the text message was October 12th. 2 days before the HR note, the timing was exact. I sat in the glow of my monitor, feeling a cold fury settle into my bones. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was a match. My sister, the one who sent me birthday cards signed "Love You Always," had deliberately reached out to my employer to sabotage my career, and my mother had condoned it. They had clipped my wings so I couldn't fly away, and then blamed me for not being able to get off the ground. My phone buzzed on the desk. I looked at it. It was a notification from Instagram. Megan had just posted a story. I felt a surge of adrenaline. I needed to know if she knew I had seen it yet. I needed to test the waters. I picked up my phone. I opened the message thread with Megan. The video file was still sitting there, the last thing sent. No text from her explaining it. No oops. She must have been so distracted she hadn't realized she sent it to me instead of Tyler. Or maybe she thought I hadn't opened it yet. I typed. My fingers were steady. Hey, I think you sent me something by mistake. I hit send. I watched the screen. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. Then, the 3 little dots appeared. The typing bubble. They pulsed for a few seconds. Then they disappeared. She was hesitating. She was rewriting. The dots appeared again, then disappeared again. She was panicking. For the first time in 2 days, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. I imagined her in her perfect suburban kitchen, gripping her phone, her heart dropping into her stomach. I imagined the frantic whisper to Tyler. She saw it. Oh God, she saw it. Finally, after 5 agonizing minutes, a message popped up. Megan, OMG. That was for Tyler. It is just stupid family stuff. Please delete. You know how Mom gets when she is venting. Nothing serious. Love you. I stared at the screen. The desperation was palpable. The exclamation points were doing a lot of heavy lifting. Just stupid family stuff. Mom venting. She was trying to minimize it. She was trying to frame the systematic destruction of my life as my mother venting. It was gaslighting in its purest form. Don't believe your eyes. Audrey, believe my emojis. I waited a full minute before replying. I wanted her to sweat. Then I typed 1 word. Sure. I hit send. Almost immediately. I saw the status under her name change. Usually. Megan's profile showed last seen just now. Suddenly, it went blank. I switched to Instagram. I went to her profile. This account is private. She had locked it down. I went to the main family group chat. Griffin updates. Usually, I could see when everyone was online. Now, the status indicators were gone. They were circling the wagons. Megan had sounded the alarm. Code red. The scapegoat knows. I could feel the walls going up around them. They were likely on a conference call right now. Mom, Dad, Megan, Tyler spinning a new narrative, figuring out how to contain the damage. They would probably come at me with love bombing next, or they would paint me as paranoid for reading too much into a private joke. But it was too late. I had seen behind the curtain. I closed my laptop and packed my bag. I walked out of the office building and into the cool night air. The city felt different tonight. It wasn't just a place I lived, it was a battlefield. When I got home, I didn't turn on the TV. I went straight to my desk. I created a new folder on my desktop. I didn't name it lawsuit or revenge or family. I named it for me. I dragged the video file into it. I dragged the screenshots of the chat logs. I dragged the screenshot of the HR complaint. Then I opened a blank text document. I typed the date, February 7th, underneath. I wrote a list. 1. What is the supplemental statement? 2. Who is Mr. Hanson at Brookfield Trust? 3. Find the anonymous email sent to HR. 4. Lawyer. I looked at the cursor blinking on the white page. It was a small, shaky step. I had no idea how to find a lawyer who could fight a family trust. I had no idea how to prove the HR email was from Megan without a subpoena. I had no idea if I had the strength to go to war with the people who had raised me. But as I looked at that folder, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for money. I wasn't even just fighting for my reputation. I was fighting for my sanity. I was fighting to prove that I existed. I saved the document. I closed the laptop. I went to the bathroom and brushed my teeth. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired. There were dark circles under my eyes. My hair was messy, but the eyes staring back at me weren't the eyes of a victim anymore. They were the eyes of a witness. February 7th, I whispered to the mirror. Let them plan their meeting. Let them print their documents. Let them think they had handled the Audrey problem. They had no idea that Audrey was just getting started. The folder on my desktop named for me was a black hole. Every time I opened it, I felt the gravity of it trying to pull me in, to crush me under the weight of the reality I was uncovering. But I knew I could not navigate this alone. I needed eyes that were sharper than mine, and tools that could dig deeper than a simple video player. On Tuesday evening, I went to Jasmine's apartment. I had told her I needed help with a corrupted file, a half-truth that felt heavy on my tongue. Jasmine lived with her boyfriend, Leo, a freelance IT contractor who spent his days building firewalls and recovering lost data for small businesses. If anyone could strip the digital noise away from Megan's video, it was him. I sat on their worn leather sofa, my laptop clutching to my chest like a shield. Leo was at his desk, a sprawling setup with 3 monitors humming with blue light. So, Leo said, spinning his chair around. He was a lanky guy with kind eyes and a t-shirt that read, I am here because you broke something. Jasmine says you have a ghost in the machine. What are we looking at? Corrupted backup accidental deletion. It is a video, I said, my voice tight. Someone sent it to me. The quality is bad. It is a screen recording of a screen recording, basically, and the person was scrolling fast. I need to see the text. I need to see what they wrote. Leo nodded, professional and detached. Okay, easy enough. I can run it through some stabilization software. Go frame by frame, maybe sharpen the text artifacts. Send it over. I transferred the file. I watched the progress bar crawl across the screen, feeling a wave of nausea. I was about to show an outsider the raw, bleeding evidence of my family's cruelty. Leo opened the file. Megan's voice filled the room, cheerful and poisonous. Okay, so here's how you screen record receipts. Mom? Leo frowned, tilting his head. He didn't look at me. He just started typing, his fingers flying across a mechanical keyboard. He isolated the video feed, muting the audio. On his center monitor, the chat log appeared, blown up and grainy. "The resolution is okay," Leo muttered, "but the motion blur is the problem. She is scrolling like she is in a hurry. Let me see if I can interpolate the frames." He worked in silence for a few minutes. Jasmine came in from the kitchen with 3 mugs of tea. She set one down in front of me and gave my shoulder a squeeze. She knew what was on the screen, but she hadn't told Leo the context. She was letting me decide how much to share. "Got something," Leo said. "Here, this section where she pauses to laugh, I can clear that up." He hit a key. The blurry gray bubbles on the screen sharpened into legible black text. It was a message from my Aunt Grace. Aunt Grace. "I talked to Linda. She is worried about the Reeves situation. If Audrey remembers what happened in the session, it could be a problem." I stared at the screen. "Reeves," I whispered. Leo kept working, unaware of the ice spreading through my veins. "And here is another one. It was really blurry, but I stacked a few frames." He pointed to a message from my father. "Dad, we just need to make sure we are altering the letter to match the timeline. If the date is wrong, the judge will throw it out." "Altering the letter," Leo read aloud, his voice flat. He paused, his hands hovering over the keyboard. He turned to look at me, his expression confused. "Audrey, is this legal stuff judge altering?" I tried to answer, but my throat closed up. I looked at the words on the screen. Reeves, altering, doctor. Reeves was a therapist I had seen for 3 months during my junior year of college. I was 20 years old. I had suffered a severe panic attack during finals week, a humiliating public breakdown in the library where I couldn't stop crying and hyperventilating. My parents had come to pick me up. They had been so supportive then. They had found Dr. Reeves. They had paid for the sessions. I had trusted Dr. Reeves. I had told him about the pressure I felt to be perfect, about the way my mother's love felt conditional, about the crushing anxiety that I was a disappointment. And now, 12 years later, his name was in the Griffin Inner Circle chat. "Audrey," Leo asked gently, "what is this file?" I opened my mouth to say, "It is nothing," but the dam broke. The stoicism I had been clinging to since Friday night shattered. I put my face in my hands and let out a sob that sounded like something tearing. "They are framing me," I choked out. "My family. They are using my old therapy notes. They are changing dates on documents. They are trying to steal my inheritance." The room went dead silent. The only sound was the whir of Leo's computer fans. Jasmine was beside me in an instant, her arm around me, pulling me into her side. "It is okay," she murmured. "Let it out. You are safe here." I cried for a solid 5 minutes, the kind of ugly, heaving crying that leaves you exhausted. When I finally lifted my head, Leo was still watching me. He didn't look awkward or dismissive. He looked angry. "Okay," Leo said. His voice was different now, harder. "If they are altering documents, that is fraud. If they are messing with digital files. There are fingerprints. Let's get everything, every single pixel." We spent the next 2 hours dissecting the video. Leo was methodical. He slowed the playback speed to 5%. He zoomed in on corners. He adjusted contrast levels to reveal details hiding in the shadows. We found more. There was a blurry exchange between Megan and Tyler that I had missed on my laptop. Tyler: "Did you get Aunt Grace on board for the story about the college meltdown? We need a witness who isn't just immediate family." Megan: "She is ready. She will say she was there when Audrey threw the lamp." I stared at the text. "I never threw a lamp," I said, my voice shaking. "I have never thrown anything in my life." I sat in a chair and cried. That was the meltdown. I sat in a chair and cried because I thought I was going to fail a history exam. "They are scripting it," Jasmine said, her face pale. "They are literally writing a script and casting roles." "And look at this," Leo said. He pointed to the freeze frame of the PDF. The supplemental statement. He had sharpened the header, next to the date, which was 2 weeks from now. There was a reference code, Ref Doc Estate Medical 2014. 2014, I said. That was the year I graduated college. That was the year of the panic attack. They are linking the current estate plan to medical records from a decade ago, Leo said. They are trying to prove a long-term pattern. I felt sick. But those records are confidential. Doctor, Reeves cannot just give them my notes. That is illegal. HIPAA violations. Unless, Leo said, looking at me with sympathy. You gave them permission. I shook my head. I would never. Are you sure? Leo asked. Think back. Did you sign anything? Anything that seemed standard? Insurance forms, billing agreements. I froze. The memory was foggy, buried under the shame of that time in my life. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table in my parents' house, recovering from the panic attack. I was on medication that made me drowsy. My father had put a stack of papers in front of me. Just some insurance stuff. Honey, he had said, we need to make sure the insurance covers Dr. Reeves, and we want to set up a safety net for you in case you need to take a semester off. Just sign here and here. I had signed. I had signed everything they put in front of me because I was 20, scared, and I believed they were saving me. Oh my God, I whispered. I signed a waiver, or a release. I signed something. We need to find out what that was, Jasmine said firmly. I left their apartment at 10 o'clock at night. I had a USB drive in my pocket with the enhanced images and a transcript Leo had typed up. I felt flayed open, exposed, but I also felt armed. When I got home, I didn't sleep. I went to the closet where I kept my old boxes, the ones I dragged from apartment to apartment, filled with tax returns and old birthday cards. I dug through the box labeled college. I found old essays. I found a graduation program. I found a folder of medical receipts. And there, tucked behind a receipt for a prescription, was an email printout. I must have printed it years ago when I was organizing my tax documents. It was from my father to me. Dated August 2014. Subject forms attached Audrey. Attached are the copies of the forms you signed yesterday for your records. Good job getting this done. It will make things much smoother with the estate planning and the doctors. Love, Dad. I didn't have the attachment. The printout was just the email body, but the subject line made my blood run cold. Estate planning and the doctors, they had bundled them together. They had likely slipped a power of attorney or a broad medical release into the stack of insurance forms. They had been planning this for 12 years, or at the very least. They had secured the weapons 12 years ago, just waiting for a reason to use them. I needed to know what estate planning meant. The next morning, I called in sick to work. It was the first time in 5 years I had taken a sick day when I wasn't running a fever. I didn't care. I had a more important job. I had an appointment at 11 o'clock with Ms. Dalton. Ms. Dalton was an independent financial advisor who had been recommended to me by a friend in the accounting department at work. She was not connected to my family. She was not connected to Brookdale's old money social circles where my parents desperately tried to fit in. Her office was in a glass building downtown, modern and sterile. Ms. Dalton was a woman in her 50s with sharp gray hair and glasses that hung on a chain. She listened to me without interrupting as I gave her the sanitized version of the story. I told her I was concerned about my standing in a family trust and wanted to understand the public records regarding my grandfather's assets. I need to know what exists, I said. My family is opaque about money. I know my grandfather, Harold Griffin, had investments. I know there was a cabin, but I do not know whose name is on what. Ms. Dalton nodded. We can certainly look at public property records and business registrations. That is all open information if you know where to look. She turned to her computer. Let's start with the entities. You mentioned Griffin Family Holdings. She typed. I watched the reflection of the search bar in her glasses. Here we go, she said. Griffin Family Holdings, LLC, incorporated in 2010. She clicked a link. A document appeared on the screen. Okay, Ms. Dalton said, scrolling. Original filing lists, 3 managing members, Harold Griffin, Charles Griffin, and looks like a silent partner listed only as a trust. What about now? I asked. She clicked on the History tab. There was an amendment filed. Let's see. Date of filing June 2024. My grandfather had died in January of 2024. This was 6 months after his death. The amendment removed Harold Griffin. Ms. Dalton said. That is standard, but it also restructured the membership. The current managing members are listed as Charles Griffin and Megan Griffin. I stared at the names. Megan, I asked. My sister. She is listed as a manager. Yes, Ms. Dalton said. And there is a text note here regarding the transfer of interest. It says, interest transferred per agreement of consolidation. Is my name there? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Audrey Griffin. Ms. Dalton scanned the document. She did a text search. No, she said softly. Your name does not appear on the LLC registration. Audrey. She turned to look at me. Her expression was professional, but her eyes held a flicker of pity. June of 2024. Do you remember what was happening then? I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Yes, I remember perfectly. June of 2024. That was the month the anonymous complaint had been sent to HR, costing me my promotion. That was the month my boyfriend of 3 years, Mark, had broken up with me after my mother had taken him out to lunch to chat, and he had come back acting strange and distant. I had been a wreck that month. I had been crying, anxious, barely sleeping. I had gone to my parents for comfort, and while I was crying on their sofa, they were filing paperwork to remove me from the family company. They waited until I was down, I said. They waited until I was too distracted to ask questions. Ms. Dalton typed something else. Let's look at the assets. The LLC owns 2 properties. One is the commercial building on 4th Street. The other is a residential property at Lake Clearview. The cabin, I said. The tax assessment on the cabin is significant. Miss Dalton said, value is listed at $1.2 million, and the LLC also holds an investment portfolio without a subpoena. I cannot see the balance, but based on the dividends reported in their other filings, we are likely talking about a mid-7-figure sum. I felt the room spin. Millions. My grandfather had left millions, and my father and sister had quietly moved it all into an LLC where they were the only managers. Is there any way I could have been removed without knowing? I asked. If you never had a direct stake, they didn't need your permission, Miss Dalton explained. But if you were a beneficiary of the trust that held the original shares, then removing you or redirecting those assets would require either your signature or a legal finding that you were disqualified. A legal finding, the supplemental statement, Incident A, Incident B, Incident C. They are trying to disqualify me retroactively, I realized aloud. That is what the meeting is for. They are going to argue that I was never fit to manage the shares, so they consolidated them for my own protection. Miss Dalton took off her glasses. Audrey, if that is true, you need a lawyer, a litigator. This is not just bad estate planning. This looks like breach of fiduciary duty, maybe worse. I thanked her and paid the consultation fee. I walked out of her office into the bright noon sun, feeling like I was walking on the surface of Mars. The air felt too thin. I needed to talk to someone who remembered Grandpa, someone who wasn't part of the inner circle. I sat on a bench in the plaza and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name, Eli. Eli was my cousin, my mother's sister's son. He was 5 years older than me. He had drifted away from the family years ago. He moved to the West Coast, skipped holidays, and generally kept his interactions with the Griffins to a minimum. My mother called him ungrateful. I now suspected he was just sane. I called him. It rang 4 times. Hello? His voice was groggy. I forgot the time difference. It was early there. Eli, it is Audrey, I said. I am sorry to call so early. I need to ask you something weird. Audrey. He sounded surprised. Is everything okay? Is it Aunt Linda? No, I said. I mean, yes, she is fine. Physically, Eli. Did you know about the LLC, Griffin Family Holdings? There was a pause on the line, a long, heavy pause. Yeah, Eli said finally. I know about it. Why? I found out Megan is a manager, I said. And I am not. And I found a video. Eli, they are trying to prove I am crazy so they can cut me out completely. I heard him exhale, a sharp sound of disgust. Those sharks. You knew? I suspected, Eli said. Look, Audrey, I stopped going to Christmas for a reason. Your parents and mine. They got really weird when Grandpa Harold got sick. They were obsessed with the will. Obsessed. Did Grandpa ever talk to you? I asked. About me. Once, Eli said. It was right before he went into the hospice. I was visiting him. He was lucid. He was worried. Audrey, he told me he had set things up so that the grandkids would be independent. He said, specifically, at least Audrey will be okay if the others eat each other alive. Tears pricked my eyes. He said that... He did, Eli confirmed. He knew they were greedy. He knew Megan was influenced by your dad. He wanted you to have a separate share. He mentioned a direct bequest, not through the LLC. But I never got a direct bequest, I said. I got a check for $5,000 and a letter saying the rest was in trust. Then they buried it, Eli said. Audrey, if Grandpa wanted you to have a direct bequest, and you didn't get it, they didn't just change the LLC, they suppressed the will. My hand tightened on the phone until my knuckles turned white. Suppressing a will was a felony. It wasn't just mean, it was criminal. Do you have anything? I asked. Any proof? He said that. I have my journals, Eli said. I write everything down. I can find the date. I can swear an affidavit if you need me to. I always liked you. Audrey, you were the only one who didn't look at me like I was a project. Thank you, Eli, I whispered. I might need that affidavit. I hung up. I sat on the bench for a long time, watching the pigeons peck at crumbs on the pavement. Grandpa had tried to protect me. At least Audrey will be okay. He had seen the wolves in his own house, and he had tried to build a fence around me, and they had torn it down, brick by brick, using my own trust and trauma as the sledgehammer. I went back to my apartment. It was late afternoon now. The shadows were lengthening. I went to the kitchen table. It was covered in papers. The screenshots Leo had printed, the property records Ms. Dalton had given me, my own handwritten timeline. I opened the video on my laptop again. I needed to hear it one more time. I needed to find the mechanism. I scrubbed to the end, to the part I had glossed over because I had been so focused on the PDF. It was a moment right before the video cut out. Tyler was speaking. I put on my headphones. I closed my eyes. Once the petition is filed, she can scream all she wants, Tyler's voice said, smug and confident. The paperwork will say she agreed years ago. The paperwork will say she agreed years ago. I opened my eyes. The insurance forms, the medical release. They weren't just for Dr. Reeves. They must have had me sign a document that deferred my inheritance rights, or appointed them as my guardians in the event of incapacity, and they were going to use the supplemental statement to trigger that incapacity clause. They were going to argue that I had agreed, back in 2014, that if I ever became unstable again, they would take control of my assets, and now they were manufacturing the instability to activate the trap. I looked at the calendar on my wall. February 7th. That wasn't just a meeting. That was the day they were going to file the petition with the court. That was the day they were going to drop the net. I looked at the mess on my table. It looked like the desk of a conspiracy theorist. Red circles, arrows, timestamps. But it wasn't a theory. It was a map of my life. I picked up a pen and wrote a new note on a yellow legal pad. Task 1. Find the 2014 documents. Task 2. Stop the petition. Task 3. Burn the inner circle to the ground. I wasn't just sad anymore. I wasn't just scared. I was dangerous. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for a lawyer Jasmine had texted me, a man named Mr. Feld, who specialized in contentious probate. It rang. Law Office of Aaron Feld, a receptionist answered. Hi, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice of a woman who was done being the victim. My name is Audrey Griffin. I need to schedule an emergency consultation. It is regarding a fraudulent estate scheme involving my family, and I have evidence. Hold, please, the receptionist said. I waited. I looked at the photo of my family on my fridge, a picture from a Christmas 3 years ago. We were all smiling. I walked over to the fridge, took the photo down, and dropped it into the trash can. Mr. Feld can see you tomorrow at 9, the voice returned. I will be there, I said. The waiting room of Dr. Nina Cole's office was painted a shade of blue that I suspected was scientifically engineered to lower blood pressure. It was the color of a calm ocean or a morning sky, completely at odds with the hurricane spinning inside my head. I sat on a linen armchair, picking at a loose thread on my sleeve, listening to a white noise machine that sounded like distant rain. Jasmine had been gentle but firm when she gave me the card. You need a strategist. Yes, she had said, but you also need a mechanic for your brain. They have been gaslighting you for 30 years. Audrey, you cannot untangle that knot by yourself. When the door opened, Dr. Cole appeared. She was a woman in her 60s with kind, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense bob of silver hair. She didn't have the airy-fairy vibe of some of the counselors I had seen in college. She looked like someone who could stare down a storm. Audrey, she said, come on in. I walked into her office, clutching my bag. Inside that bag was my laptop, the hard drive with the video, and the folder labeled For Me. I felt less like a patient and more like an informant seeking witness protection. For the first 20 minutes, I just talked. I spilled everything. I told her about the video Megan sent. I told her about the inner circle. I told her about the supplemental statement and the anonymous HR complaint. I told her about the way my mother would sigh whenever I entered a room, as if my very existence was a burden she was heroically enduring. Doctor. Cole listened. She didn't interrupt. She took notes on a yellow pad, her pen scratching rhythmically. I feel like I'm crazy, I admitted, my voice trembling. I feel like I am making a conspiracy out of nothing. Maybe I am unstable. Maybe they are right to protect the money from me. Doctor, Cole set her pen down. She clasped her hands and looked at me across the desk. Audrey, she said, her voice steady and grounding. Let me introduce you to a term. It is called the identified patient. In family systems theory, this is the person who is selected often unconsciously, but sometimes quite deliberately, to carry the emotional baggage for the entire group. I blinked. The identified patient, or, in layman's terms, she continued, the scapegoat. By focusing on your instability, your family gets to ignore their own dysfunction. If you are the problem, then they get to be the healthy ones. They get to be the rescuers, the saints. If you suddenly stop being the problem, their entire structure collapses. She leaned forward. What you are describing, the secret chats, the coordinated narratives, the sabotage of your career, is not normal family friction. It is a campaign. It is a systematic effort to maintain a power dynamic where you are small and they are in control. Hearing it from a stranger, a professional, felt like someone had opened a window in a room full of smoke. I took a deep breath, the first full breath I had taken in days. They are trying to use my past against me, I said. I had a panic attack in college, just one really bad one, and they are using it to say I cannot handle an inheritance. That is called pathologizing normal human emotion. Doctor, Cole said. And if they are using it for financial gain, it moves from emotional abuse to exploitation. I left that first session feeling raw, but for the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt seen, and more importantly, I felt validated. I wasn't imagining the cruelty. I was detecting it. That night, armed with Dr. Cole's perspective and a bottle of sparkling water, I turned my dining table into a war room. I took the legal pad. Doctor, Cole had encouraged me to use and started drafting a timeline. I needed to see the arc of my life not as a series of personal failures, but as a timeline of external interventions. I started with 2014. Event panic attack in the university library. Family reaction, mom and dad arrive. Excessive coddling. You are too fragile for finals. The document dad brings insurance paperwork to the kitchen table. I sign without reading. Chat evidence. The video reference to Dr. Reeves's old notes, and the paperwork will say she agreed years ago. I drew a line to 2018. Event I get a serious boyfriend. Mark. Family reaction, constant criticism of him. He is not good enough. Mom takes him to lunch privately. The breakup. Mark leaves suddenly, saying, "It is too much drama with your family." Chat evidence. Megan's comment. We protected her from that loser, just like we are protecting the assets. I drew a line to 2024. Event Grandpa Harold dies in January. Family reaction secrecy. It is all in probate. Don't worry your pretty little head about the math. Event June. I am up for the team lead promotion. The sabotage. June 12th. Megan sends the anonymous email to HR, the consequence. I lose the promotion. I spiral into depression, the legal move. June 20th. The LLC is amended. My name is excluded. Megan and Dad become sole managers. The correlation was perfect. Every time I was on the verge of success, independence, or stability, a crisis occurred, and every time I was in crisis. They moved the financial goalposts. They needed me to be unstable so they could justify stealing from me, and when I wasn't unstable enough. They manufactured the instability. I looked at the timeline. It wasn't just mean gossip, it was a heist. A slow-motion, decade-long heist of my life and my legacy. My phone buzzed on the table, vibrating against the wood. I looked at the screen. A text from Megan. My stomach clenched. I hadn't spoken to her since the mistaken video incident 3 days ago. I picked up the phone. Megan, hey Odd. I know things have been weird this week, and I'm so sorry if the video upset you. It was just mom being mom. Anyway, Liam's birthday is this Saturday. We are doing a small family thing at the house. The kids really miss their Auntie Audrey. Please come. It would mean a lot to Mom and Dad to have everyone together. A chance to reset. I read the message twice. A chance to reset. The kids miss you. Doctor. Cole had warned me about this. When the scapegoat pulls away, she had said, the system will try to suck them back in. They will use guilt. They will use affection. They will use the perfect family image to lure you back into your role. My instinct was to say no, to block her number, to never set foot in Ridgewood again. But then I looked at my timeline. I looked at the gap in 2026, February 7th, the circled date on Dad's calendar, the petition deadline. I needed to know what was happening before February 7th. I needed intel. If I stayed away, they would assume I was sulking. They would feel safe. If I went, and if I played the part they expected, maybe they would slip up. I typed back, Audrey. Okay, I will be there. What time, Megan? Yay. 2:00. See you then, X. Oh, I set the phone down. I wasn't going there to eat cake. I was going there to work. Saturday was overcast. The sky a flat sheet of gray that threatened snow. I drove to Ridgewood with the radio off. Practicing my breathing. Gray rock. I repeated to myself, be a gray rock. Boring. Unreactive. Smooth. Nothing sticks to you. I parked my sedan in Megan's driveway, tucked behind Tyler's massive new SUV, the one bought with Griffin Family Holdings dividends, no doubt. The house was a sprawling colonial with manicured hedges and a wreath on the door that looked like it cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Before I got out of the car, I opened the Voice Memos app on my phone. I tapped the red button. Recording. I slipped the phone into the mesh interior pocket of my handbag. The bag was structured, stiff leather. It would hold the phone upright. The microphone would catch everything. I took a deep breath, checked my lipstick in the rearview mirror, and stepped out into the cold. I rang the doorbell. Megan opened it instantly, as if she had been waiting by the peephole. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and holding a glass of white wine. "Audrey?" she squealed, pulling me into a hug that felt like being squeezed by a boa constrictor. "You made it." I went stiff, and during the embrace, "Happy birthday to Liam," I said, keeping my voice even. Come in," she said, ushering me into the foyer. "Mom and Dad are in the kitchen. Tyler is out back with the kids." The house smelled of expensive vanilla candles and roasting meat. It was the smell of my childhood, a scent that triggered a Pavlovian response of anxiety in my gut. I walked into the kitchen. My parents were standing by the island. My mother was arranging crackers on a slate board. My father was looking at his phone. They both looked up when I entered. There was a microsecond of hesitation, a flicker of fear, or perhaps guilt before they plastered on their smiles. "There she is," my father said, his voice a little too loud. "The city girl returns." "Hi, Dad," I said. "Hi, Mom." "Audrey," my mother said. She wiped her hands on a towel and came over to give me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek. She pulled back and scrutinized my face. "You look tired, honey. Are you sleeping?" It was the opening salvo. "You look tired." Translation: "You look unstable." "I am fine," I said calmly. "Work is busy." "Work," she sighed, shaking her head. "You know, stress isn't good for certain people's conditions. You have to be careful, Audrey. We don't want a repeat of, well, you know." She trailed off, leaving the "you know" to hang in the air like a foul odor. She meant the panic attack. She meant the meltdown. Usually, I would have snapped. I would have said, "I don't have a condition, Mom," or stop bringing up college. But today, I just nodded. "I am managing it well. Thanks." My mother blinked. She looked disappointed. She had lobbed a grenade, and it hadn't exploded. "Well," she said, turning back to the crackers, "I just think you should talk to someone, you know, a professional, before you make any big decisions." My ears pricked up. Big decisions. "What kind of big decisions?" I asked, keeping my tone light, as if I were asking about the weather. "Oh, just life." She waved a hand vaguely. "Career changes, moving, anything that requires stability." She exchanged a quick, loaded glance with my father. They were terrified. They were worried that if I found out about the estate plan, I would make a scene, or hire a lawyer, or do something erratic that would disrupt their timeline. "I am not planning any big changes," I lied. "I am very happy with how things are." Megan breezed back into the room. "Okay, who needs a refill?" "Audrey, wine." "Water is fine," I said. "Come on, have a glass." Megan pushed. "It is a party." "Just water." "Thanks." Megan frowned. "God, you are no fun. Is this a new diet? Or are you on meds again?" The cruelty was so casual, so practiced. On meds again. She was trying to get a rise out of me in front of our parents. She wanted me to get defensive. She wanted me to say, "I am not on meds." "Megan, shut up." I smiled a thin, tight smile. "Just thirsty." I walked over to the sink and filled a glass with tap water. I could feel their eyes on my back. They were confused. The Audrey they knew would be defending herself by now. The Audrey they knew would be raising her voice, her face flushing red, giving them exactly the evidence they needed to say. "See, she is irrational." We moved into the living room. The party was small, just us, the kids, and Tyler's parents, who were nice people but oblivious to the undercurrents. I played with Liam and Sophie for a while, grateful for the distraction. They were innocent in this. They didn't know their college funds were being padded with their aunt's stolen inheritance. "Auntie Audrey, look at my Lego," Liam shouted, showing me a spaceship. "That is amazing, buddy," I said, genuinely smiling. "Your aunt used to play with Legos," my father said from the recliner. "She would build these tall towers and then cry when they fell over. Always took things so seriously." I ignored him. I kept my attention on Liam. Then came the cake. We gathered around the dining table. It was a massive chocolate cake. Megan was directing the operation like a general. Okay, Mom. You stand there with the camera. Tyler, light the candles. Audrey, move those gifts. You are blocking the shot. I reached out to move the stack of presents to the sideboard. Not there, Megan snapped, her voice cutting through the room. God, Audrey, use your brain. Put them on the floor. You are going to knock over the vase. It was a sudden, sharp escalation. The room went quiet. Tyler's parents looked uncomfortable. I paused, holding a wrapped box. You are always so clumsy, Megan muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Always starting drama. Can't you just do one simple thing without making it about you? Here it was, the provocation. She was baiting the hook. She wanted me to snap back. She wanted me to say, I am just moving the gifts like you asked. She wanted a fight so she could later tell the judge. She ruined my son's birthday. She is volatile. My heart hammered in my chest. The old Audrey wanted to scream. The old Audrey wanted to throw the gift on the floor and storm out. But I felt the weight of the handbag on my shoulder. I felt the phone recording. I took a breath. I looked at Megan. Her face was flushed, her eyes challenging. I will put them on the floor, I said softly. I set the gifts down gently. I stood up. I smoothed my sweater. I am not going to argue with you. Megan, I said. My voice was low, calm, and completely devoid of emotion. I stepped back from the table. Happy birthday, Liam. Megan stood there, her mouth slightly open. She looked like a tennis player who had served a ball at 100 miles per hour, only to watch it drop into a net that wasn't there. She had no return. My mother looked from Megan to me. Confusion etched on her face. This wasn't the script. I was supposed to be the villain. Well, my father cleared his throat. Let's sing. They sang Happy Birthday. I hummed along. I didn't clap. I didn't frown. I just existed, a gray rock in the middle of their chaotic current. After the cake was cut, I excused myself to use the restroom. I will be right back, I said. I walked down the hallway. The guest bathroom was near the back of the house, past the door to the garage. As I approached the bathroom, I heard voices, low, hushed whispers coming from the mudroom near the garage door. I slowed my steps. I clutched my bag tighter, angling the mesh pocket toward the sound. It was Tyler and my mother. Weird, Tyler was saying. She is acting weird. She is too quiet. Maybe she is on something, my mother hissed. Or maybe she suspects. This doesn't give us anything to work with, Tyler said, sounding frustrated. If she stays like this, the volatility argument falls flat. We need an incident, Linda. We need her to blow up before the 7th. Hansen said we need recent evidence. She will, my mother assured him, though she sounded unsure. She always does. Just keep pushing. Megan will trigger her. She knows which buttons to press. I stood frozen in the hallway, my blood running cold. We need an incident. We need her to blow up before the 7th. They were actively strategizing how to cause me psychological distress so they could document it for a lawyer. It was monstrous. It was calculated. I quietly backed away, stepping into the bathroom and locking the door. I turned on the faucet to mask the sound of my breathing. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was shaking, but not from fear, from rage. They wanted an explosion. I wouldn't give them a spark. Not a single ember. I flushed the toilet, washed my hands, and walked back out. I went straight to the kitchen. Thank you for having me, I said to the room at large. I have a headache, so I'm going to head home early. Happy birthday, Liam. You are leaving, Megan asked, her voice sharp. We haven't even opened presents. I need to rest, I said. Work tomorrow. You are unbelievable, Megan spat. Always running away. Good night, everyone, I said. I walked out the front door. I walked to my car. I got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. Only when I was 3 blocks away, safely out of Ridgewood, did I pull over to the side of the road. I reached into my bag and pulled out the phone. I stopped the recording. I hit play. I fast-forwarded to the end. I held the phone to my ear. The audio was crisp. This doesn't give us anything to work with. If she stays like this, the volatility argument falls flat. We need an incident. Linda. I let out a laugh. It was a jagged, wet sound. I had them. It is admissible, Doctor, Cole said on Monday evening. We were sitting in her office again. I had played the recording for her. She looked sterner than I had ever seen her. Ethically, she said, it is horrific. Legally, in a single-party consent state, you have proof of conspiracy to manufacture evidence. They wanted me to scream, I said, staring at the floor. They were poking me with sticks, waiting for the animal to bite. And you didn't bite, Doctor, Cole said. She smiled. A genuine, proud smile. You broke the cycle. Audrey, you changed the dance steps, and because you changed the steps, they tripped over their own feet. But they are still moving forward, I said. Tyler mentioned the 7th, the deadline. They are going to file the petition whether I scream or not. They are going to use the old documents. Then you need to stop them. Doctor, Cole said, you have the emotional tools now. You know who you are. Now you need the legal tools. I nodded. I was ready. I went home and opened my laptop. I pulled up the email draft I had started 3 days ago to Mr. Aaron Feld, the probate attorney. I attached the video file of the Inner Circle chat. I attached the audio file from the birthday party, labeled Evidence of Conspiracy. I attached my timeline. I wrote, Dear Mr. Feld, I am writing to formally retain your services regarding the estate of Harold Griffin. I believe my family is engaging in fraud, undue influence, and a conspiracy to disinherit me based on falsified claims of mental incapacity. The attached evidence demonstrates a coordinated effort to manufacture grounds for a petition they intend to file on February 7th. I need to stop this petition, and I need to challenge the validity of the documents they are using. I am available for a consultation immediately. Sincerely, Audrey Griffin. I hovered the mouse over the send button. For a moment, I hesitated. Sending this email was the point of no return. Once lawyers were involved, there was no going back to Thanksgiving dinners or pretending things were okay. It was the end of my family as I knew it. But then I remembered my mother's voice in the recording. Just keep pushing. Megan will trigger her. They had already ended the family. They had turned it into a business, and I was just a liability to be liquidated. I clicked send. The email whooshed away. I sat back in my chair. The apartment was quiet, but for the first time in forever, it wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I looked at the calendar on my wall. I took a red marker and circled February 7th. Bring it on, I whispered. The law office of Mr. Aaron Feld was located in a restored brownstone on the edge of the judicial district, a building that smelled of old wood and expensive coffee. It was a stark contrast to the sterile, corporate glass of the marketing firm where I worked, or the manicured, performative perfection of my parents' home in Ridgewood. Here, everything felt heavy and permanent. I sat across from Mr. Feld at a mahogany table that was large enough to land a small aircraft on. I had laid out my life in paper piles. To my left was the transcript of the Inner Circle video Leo and I had extracted. In the center was the timeline of my instability, matched against my family's financial maneuvers. To my right was the USB drive containing the audio recording from Megan's house, where my mother and brother-in-law openly discussed baiting me into a reaction. Mr. Feld was a man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a stillness that I found comforting. He didn't look at his watch. He didn't check his phone. He just listened, his eyes moving from document to document as I spoke for 45 minutes straight. And that is everything, I said, my voice hoarse. They have a plan to file a petition on February 7th. They claim I am mentally unfit to manage my share of my grandfather's estate. They are using documents I signed in 2014, under the guise of insurance paperwork, to support that claim. Mr. Feld leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. He remained silent for a long moment, processing the deluge of betrayal I had just poured out. Audrey, he said finally, what you have described, and what this evidence suggests, is a textbook case of constructive fraud and undue influence, but it is also something more insidious. It is a breach of fiduciary duty. He pulled a legal pad closer and uncapped a fountain pen. If your father and sister are acting as trustees or executors of your grandfather's estate, they have a legal obligation to act in the best interest of all beneficiaries. That includes you. If they are manufacturing evidence to discredit you, or if they are altering the structure of the LLC to dilute your interest without your informed consent, they are breaking the law, not just moral law, state law. They kept saying they were protecting the assets. I said, "That is the phrase they use. They act like I am a liability. That is a common narrative in these cases." Mr. Feld noted, jotting down the words undue influence. They create a problem, your alleged instability to justify a solution that happens to benefit them financially. The fact that they discussed provoking you at the birthday party is critical. It shows intent. It shows that the instability is not an observed reality, but a manufactured goal. He looked at me over the rims of his glasses. The key here is the medical evidence, this supplemental statement you saw in the video. If they are presenting a narrative that you have a long-standing diagnosis of incompetence, we need to prove that is a lie. "I saw a therapist for 3 months, I said. "Dr. Reeves, it was over a decade ago. We need those records." "Mr. Feld said firmly, "I am going to draft a formal request for your complete file from Dr. Reeves's clinic. We need to see exactly what his notes say. If he never diagnosed you with a chronic condition that affects your decision-making, then any document your family created claiming otherwise is fraudulent." He circled something on his pad. "And the insurance forms from 2014. Did you keep copies?" "No," I admitted, feeling a flush of shame. "I was 20. I trusted my dad. He said it was standard." "Do not blame yourself." "Mr. Feld said gently, "That is how undue influence works. It relies on trust. However, if they intend to use those documents on February 7th, they will have to produce them. We are going to file a demand for information. We will ask for a full accounting of the estate and copies of all waivers you supposedly signed." "What happens when you send that?" I asked. "They do not know I have a lawyer. They think I am just the difficult daughter who went home early from a birthday party." Mr. Feld smiled, a sharp, shark-like smile that made me glad he was on my side. "When they receive my letter, the element of surprise shifts. They are currently operating on the assumption that you are passive. We are about to inform them that you are active, represented, and watching. It will likely cause panic. You need to be prepared for that." "I am ready," I said, and I meant it. Mr. Feld was right about the panic. 3 days after our meeting, the information inquiry letter was delivered to my parents' house and to Megan's address. I knew the exact moment it arrived because my phone, which had been blissfully quiet, suddenly lit up like a slot machine. It was 2 o'clock on a Thursday. I was at my desk at work, analyzing a spreadsheet, when the buzzing started. Incoming call mom. Incoming call mom. Incoming call dad. Incoming call Megan. I stared at the screen, my heart rate spiking. I had expected this, but the physical reaction was still there, the conditioning of 3 decades telling me to pick up, to apologize, to fix it. I turned the phone over, gray rock. I reminded myself, let it go to voicemail. I put on my noise-canceling headphones and focused on my work. But the notifications kept coming. At 5 o'clock, I walked to my car and finally checked the messages. There were 6 voicemails. I played the first one from my mother. "Audrey." Her voice was high, tight, and laced with that familiar tremolo she used when she wanted to guilt me. "Audrey, honey, pick up. We just got a very confusing letter from a lawyer, a Mr. Feld. He claims he represents you. Please call me back. There must be a misunderstanding. You wouldn't hire a lawyer against your own family. You just wouldn't." I deleted it. I played the second one. She was crying now. "I don't understand what is happening," she sobbed. "We have done everything for you, everything. And now you are threatening to drag us through court. To drag our name through the mud, your father is devastated. Audrey, he is sitting here holding his chest. Do you want to give him a heart attack? Call me back immediately. The guilt hooks were sharp. Heart attack. Devastated. After all we have done. I sat in the cold car, gripping the steering wheel. A week ago, this would have broken me. I would have called back, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. But now, I had the image of the inner circle chat burned into my retinas. I knew that while she was leaving this voicemail, she was likely texting Megan about how to spin this to their advantage. I didn't call back. I drove home, stopped at the grocery store, and bought ingredients for a complex risotto. I needed to stir something. I needed to focus on a process that had a guaranteed, logical outcome. I was chopping shallots when my buzzer rang. I froze, the knife hovering over the cutting board. I lived in a secure building. You had to buzz to get into the lobby. I walked to the intercom. Who is it? It is Megan, the voice crackled through the speaker. Let me up. Audrey, I have Chinese food. My stomach dropped. Megan never came to my apartment. She called it quaint, in a tone that meant sad. She had driven 40 minutes into the city on a weeknight. I debated leaving her there, but Mr. Feld had told me to document everything. If she was here, she was desperate, and desperate people made mistakes. I buzzed her in. I opened my apartment door and stood in the frame, blocking the entrance. Megan came up the stairs, looking breathless and flustered. She was wearing a trench coat and carrying a large paper bag that smelled of grease and MSG, and a shoebox. God, those stairs, she huffed, brushing past me before I could invite her in. She marched into my living room and set the food on my coffee table. You really need an elevator. Odd. She looked around my apartment, her eyes scanning for what? Lawyer, a wire. What do you want? Megan? I asked, closing the door but staying near it. I crossed my arms. I brought dinner, she said, gesturing to the bag. And I brought these. She tapped the shoebox. I was going through the attic and found a bunch of your old photos. Kindergarten stuff. I thought you might want them. It was a peace offering, or a prop. Look, we are a family. Here are your memories. I am cooking, I said. I don't want the takeout, Megan sighed. Dropping the act of cheerfulness, she slumped onto my sofa, uninvited. Okay, fine. Look, Audrey, Mom is a mess. She has been crying for 3 hours. Dad is pacing holes in the rug. What is with the letter? Why are you doing this? I think the letter explains itself, I said calmly. I am asking for information about Grandpa's estate, information that has been kept from me. Nothing has been kept from you, Megan exclaimed, throwing her hands up. We are protecting it for you. You know how you are with money. You get stressed. You make impulsive decisions. Dad just wanted to make sure there was a safety net. I am 32, I said. I manage corporate budgets. I have a 401k. I have never asked you for a dime. What evidence do you have that I am impulsive with money? Megan faltered. She looked away. It is not just money, Audrey. It is everything. The emotional stuff. The group chat video. Look, I know you saw it. I know that is why you are mad. I am not mad, I said. I am informed. It was just venting, she insisted, her voice rising to a whine. You know how Tyler gets. You know how Mom gets. We were just blowing off steam. It didn't mean anything. It meant enough that you were drafting legal documents based on it, I countered. I saw the PDF, Megan. Supplemental statement. That is not venting. That is a dossier. Megan's face hardened. The mask slipped. The concerned sister vanished, replaced by the shark I had seen in the video. You don't understand, she snapped. It is way more complicated than you think. Dad has been planning this structure for years. Since way before Grandpa died, he had to. Why? I asked. Why did he have to? Because he was terrified. Megan blurted out. He was terrified that if Grandpa left you a direct share, you would do something stupid, like side with Grandma. I froze. Grandma. My grandmother, Mary Ann, had been in a nursing home for 5 years. We visited her occasionally, but she was quiet, often confused. My father managed her care. "What does Grandma have to do with this?" I asked. "She has dementia." "She has moments," Megan muttered. Realizing she had said too much, she started picking at her fingernails. "Dad was worried that if you had financial leverage, you might, I don't know, listen to her crazy stories. He wanted to keep the estate unified, under strong management. That is all." Sighed with Grandma. Crazy stories. Eli, my cousin, had told me Grandpa wanted to protect me if the others ate each other alive. Now Megan was implying there was a fracture between my father and my grandmother, a fracture they feared I would widen. "So," I said slowly, "Dad decided to label me as unstable so he could control my vote, so he could prevent me from interfering with whatever he is doing with Grandma's assets, too." Megan stood up. She looked furious. "You are twisting everything. You are just trying to cash grab off the family. That is all this is. You are jealous because I have the house and the kids and the responsibility. And you have this—" She waved a hand at my apartment. "I am not jealous, Megan," I said. "I just want what is mine." Megan walked to the door. She stopped and turned back to me. Her eyes were cold, assessing. "You know," she said, her voice dropping to a low, conversational tone that was somehow more menacing than a shout. "If you drag this into court, everything becomes public record. Your medical history, your therapy notes, the HR complaints." She smiled. A tight, poisoned sugar smile. "It would be a shame if your bosses at the firm found out you were suing your own family because you are mentally unwell. People talk. Audrey, reputations are fragile. You might win a few dollars, but you could lose your career. Is it really worth it?" The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. She was threatening to nuke my professional life if I didn't back down. I looked at her. I saw the fear behind the threat. She was terrified of what Mr. Feld would find. "Please leave," I said. "Think about it," Megan said. She opened the door. "Oh, and happy early birthday, since you probably won't be coming to the dinner." She slammed the door. I locked it. I engaged the deadbolt. Then I leaned against the wood and exhaled a breath I felt like I had been holding for 20 minutes. I walked to the table. I picked up the shoebox of photos she had left. I didn't open it. I picked up the bag of Chinese food and walked to the kitchen. I dropped it into the trash can. Then I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I opened the voice memo app. I hadn't recorded the audio this time, I hadn't been quick enough. But I sat down immediately at my computer and opened a new document. Date January 25th. Time 6:45 p.m. Incident. Megan Griffin unannounced visit. I typed everything. I typed the dialogue verbatim while it was still fresh in my mind. I typed the thread about my job. I typed the comment about siding with Grandma. I sent the document to Dr. Cole and Mr. Feld. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Cole. "Dr. Cole. This is classic intimidation. The threat to your career is a coercion tactic. It proves they are operating from a place of fear, not concern. You did well to stand your ground. Stay the course." An hour later, an email from Mr. Feld. "Mr. Feld received. The comment regarding your grandmother is significant. It suggests a motive beyond simple greed. There is a family conflict we are not seeing yet. And the threat regarding your employment is actionable. If they attempt to contact your employer, we will file for a restraining order. Keep this note safe." I felt a strange sense of calm. They had sent their best soldier Megan to intimidate me, and I hadn't flinched. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork and silence. The silence from my family was deafening. No more voicemails, no more texts. They had gone dark, which meant they were talking to their own lawyers. I went to work. I went to therapy. I cooked risotto. I waited. Then, on a Tuesday in early February, Mr. Feld called me. "Audrey," he said, his voice brisk. "We got the package from Dr. Reeves' clinic." I gripped the phone. "And it is exactly as we hoped," he said. "Dr. Reeves included a cover letter along with the session notes. He states clearly that you were treated for acute situational anxiety related to academic pressure. He explicitly writes that there was no diagnosis of a personality disorder, no chronic instability, and no recommendation for long-term guardianship or medication. I let out a sob. I hadn't realized how much I had internalized their lie until I heard the truth. I wasn't crazy. I had just been a stressed college student. "There is more," Mr. Feld said. "The notes indicate that your parents called him 3 times, trying to pressure him to prescribe stronger medication and to write a letter excusing you from school for a semester. Dr. Reeves refused. He noted in the file, parents appear overly anxious to pathologize the patient's normal stress response. Advise them to allow patient autonomy." "They tried to force him," I whispered. "Even back then." "This destroys their narrative," Mr. Feld said with satisfaction. "The supplemental statement they were waving around in that video, if it claims Dr. Reeves deemed you unstable, it is a fabrication. We have the source code now, and it says you are sane. So we can stop the petition," I asked. "Better," Mr. Feld said. "We can force them to explain themselves to a judge. But first, we have to go through the process." "What process?" "I just received a notification via courier," Mr. Feld said. "The probate court has scheduled a mandatory mediation. It is a pre-hearing requirement before any petition can be ruled on." "When?" I asked, though I already knew. "February 7th, Mr. Feld said. "At the Brookdale Probate Center, 10 o'clock in the morning." The date on the calendar. "They didn't cancel it?" I asked. "No," Mr. Feld said. "They are doubling down. They likely think they can bully you into a settlement in the mediation room. They think if they put you in a room with your parents and a judge, you will revert to the obedient daughter." I looked at the reflection of my face in the window. The woman looking back wasn't the obedient daughter. She was the woman who had walked out of Megan's house. She was the woman who had documented her own abuse. She was the woman who had uncovered a decade-long conspiracy. "They are going to be surprised," I said. "I will be there with you." Mr. Feld assured me, "We will bring the video. We will bring the audio. We will bring Dr. Reeves's notes. We are not going there to settle, Audrey. We are going there to expose them." I hung up the phone. I walked over to my wall calendar. February 7th was tomorrow. I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt a cold, hard resolve. I thought about my grandfather, Harold. I thought about his wish that I would be okay if the others ate each other alive. They had tried to eat me, but they had forgotten that I was a griffin too. And tomorrow, I was going to show them exactly what that meant. I went to my closet and picked out my outfit for the mediation. A navy blue suit, sharp, professional, armor. I laid it out on the bed. "See you tomorrow, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "Hope you are ready for the inner circle to meet the real world." The morning of February 7th broke with a sky the color of a bruised plum. It was cold, the kind of biting winter chill that seeps through wool coats and settles in the marrow. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom, smoothing the lapels of my navy suit. I looked like a stranger to myself, sharper, colder, more defined. The Audrey who used to apologize for taking up space was gone, replaced by this woman who was about to walk into a room and burn down the only world she had ever known. Mr. Feld met me in the lobby of the Brookdale Probate Center. It was a nondescript government building, smelling of floor wax and stale anxiety. He carried a leather briefcase that looked heavy, filled with the paper trail of my family's betrayal. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his voice low and professional. "Nauseous," I admitted, "but ready." "Good. Remember, today is about facts. They will try to make it about feelings. They will try to make you feel small. Do not let them. You have the truth in your corner." We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The doors slid open to reveal a waiting area lined with uncomfortable chairs. And there they were. My parents, Charles and Linda, were sitting side by side, their posture rigid. My mother was wearing a pearl necklace I had given her for her 60th birthday. My father was staring at a spot on the carpet, his jaw set in a hard line. Megan sat next to them, looking pale and significantly less polished than usual. Tyler was pacing near the water cooler, scrolling furiously on his phone. When we walked in, the air in the room seemed to vanish. My mother looked up, and for a split second, her eyes filled with that familiar mix of pity and disappointment. Then she saw Mr. Feld, and the pity curdled into fear. "Audrey," my father said, standing up. He made a move as if to approach me, to hug me, to play the role of the benevolent patriarch. I took a step back. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. "Mr. Feld stepped between us. "Mr. Griffin, please save your comments for the mediation room." My father stopped, blinking as if he had been slapped. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the realization dawn on him the game had changed. A clerk opened the double doors. "All parties for the Griffin estate matter. Please come in." The conference room was windowless and beige, dominated by a long oval table. At the head of the table sat Ms. Hartley, the probate referee. She was a woman who looked like she had heard every lie ever invented and was impressed by none of them. We sat on one side, me and Mr. Feld. They sat on the other. Mom, Dad, Megan, Tyler, and their attorney, a slick-looking man named Mr. Sterling, who smelled of expensive cologne. "Good morning," Ms. Hartley said. Her voice was dry. "We are here to address the concerns regarding the administration of the estate of the late Harold Griffin. The goal of this mediation is to reach a resolution without the need for a formal trial. However, I must remind you that if evidence of substantial fraud or breach of fiduciary duty arises, I am obligated to refer this matter to the district court." She looked at everyone over her reading glasses. "Mr. Sterling, you may begin with your client's position." Mr. Sterling stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He had a smooth, practiced baritone. "Thank you. Ms. Hartley, my clients, Charles and Megan Griffin, have acted with the utmost integrity in managing the family assets. The reality, which is painful for this family to discuss, is that Audrey Griffin has struggled over the years." He paused, letting the word struggled hang in the air like a tragic diagnosis. "Her grandfather, Harold, was deeply worried about her," Sterling continued, glancing at me with performative sympathy. "He feared she could not handle the responsibility of a large inheritance. He feared she would be vulnerable to exploitation. The current structure of the LLC and the trust arrangements reflect his explicit wishes to protect Audrey from herself. It is what is best for all parties." It was a beautiful story. It was clean. It was logical. It erased all the malice and replaced it with concern. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Megan nodded solemnly, looking down at her hands. "Audrey is loved," Sterling concluded. "This is not about exclusion. It is about protection." Ms. Hartley nodded slowly. She turned to us. "Mr. Feld." Mr. Feld didn't stand up. He didn't button his jacket. He simply reached into his briefcase and pulled out a remote control. "Ms. Hartley," he said, "we dispute the narrative that this arrangement was made for my client's protection. We believe it was made for her exclusion, driven by greed, and facilitated by a conspiracy to manufacture a false medical history." "That is preposterous," Mr. Sterling scoffed. "We have evidence." "Mr. Feld said, "If I may." He pointed the remote at the large monitor on the wall. The screen flickered to life. Megan's voice filled the room, loud and clear. "Okay, so here is how you screen record receipts. Mom." I watched them. I watched the blood drain from Megan's face. She looked like she was going to faint. Her hand flew to her mouth. On the screen, the Griffin Inner Circle chat scrolled by. "She is one meltdown away from a breakdown. We just want to protect the family assets. Did you show Mr. Hanson the examples?" My mother went rigid. She stared at the screen, her eyes widening in horror as she saw her own words, her own cruelty, projected in high definition. My father clenched his jaw so hard I thought his teeth would crack. He looked at Tyler. Tyler looked at the floor. Then came the audio from the video. Once the petition is filed, she can scream all she wants. The paperwork will say she agreed years ago. Mr. Feld paused the video. The room was deadly silent. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan. Miss Hartley, Mr. Feld said, I would like to draw your attention to that last statement. The paperwork will say she agreed years ago. This suggests that the respondents are relying on documents signed in the past to justify a current disinheritance. Miss Hartley looked at my father. Her expression was no longer neutral. It was icy. Mr. Griffin, she said, can you explain what your son-in-law meant by that? My father cleared his throat. He looked at Mr. Sterling for help, but the lawyer was busy shuffling papers, looking suddenly very interested in his own notes. It was just talk, my father stammered, venting, frustration. Audrey has been difficult. Difficult. Mr. Feld pressed. He hit play again. The video showed the supplemental statement with my high school photo. Megan, we have the emails from her sick days. If we can prove a history of instability. Is this how you protect a loved one? Mr. Feld asked. By compiling a dossier of their lowest moments, by sharing confidential information about their mental health in a group chat. We were just trying to be prepared, my mother blurted out. Her voice was shrill. She is unstable. She had a breakdown in college, doctor. Reeves said so. Actually, Mr. Feld said, pulling a document from his folder. Doctor, Reeves said the opposite. He slid the letter across the table to Miss Hartley. This is a certified statement from Dr. Reeves's clinic. It confirms that Audrey Griffin was never diagnosed with any personality disorder or chronic instability. It states that her parents attempted to pressure him into creating such a diagnosis, which he refused. My mother gasped. She looked at my father. Charles. My father closed his eyes. So, Ms. Hartley said, reading the letter. The premise of her instability is exaggerated. We may have overemphasized certain events, my father admitted, his voice barely a whisper. But we were worried Harold was worried. Harold was not worried, a voice said from the speakers. Everyone jumped. On the monitor, the video feed had changed. It was no longer the chat log. It was a live Zoom call. An elderly woman with white hair and sharp blue eyes was staring out from the screen. She was sitting in a wheelchair in a sunlit room. Grandma? I whispered. It was Marianne, my grandmother. Mrs. Griffin. Miss, Hartley said, looking surprised. Thank you for joining us. I wouldn't miss it, Marianne said. Her voice was frail but clear. I have been listening, and I have had enough of this nonsense. She looked directly at the camera, piercing through the lens to look at her son. Charles, she said, tell the truth. Mom, my father pleaded. You are confused. You don't understand the finances. I understand perfectly, Marianne snapped. Harold told me everything before he died. He told me he was leaving Audrey a direct share of the cabin and the investment accounts, 30%. He told me he was afraid you and Megan would try to cheat her. That is not true, Megan cried out. Grandpa loved us. He loved you, Marianne said, but he knew you were greedy, and he knew Charles was jealous that Harold always had a soft spot for Audrey. The room was spinning. 30%. Millions of dollars. But the will, Mr. Sterling tried to interject. The will was suppressed, Marianne declared. Or at least, the real one was, and the LLC was changed. I know because I signed the original papers with Harold. She took a breath, looking tired. And there is one more thing. The documents from college. My stomach tightened. This was it. When Audrey was sick that year, Marianne said, looking at me with infinite sadness, Charles told me they were getting her to sign insurance forms, but later I found a copy in Harold's desk. It wasn't insurance. It was a durable power of attorney and a waiver of beneficiary rights triggered by medical incapacity. I felt the blood leave my face. They had tricked me into signing away my rights when I was 20 years old, heavily medicated, and crying at their kitchen table. They presented those to the lawyers years ago, Marianne said. They told Harold that Audrey didn't want the responsibility, that she had signed out. That is how they cut her out. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb that had just detonated. Ms. Hartley looked at Mr. Sterling. Counselor, is this true? Did your clients rely on a waiver obtained from a 20-year-old under medical distress to alter the estate plan? Mr. Sterling looked pale. He started packing his briefcase. I think we need a recess. I need to confer with my clients regarding these new allegations. I think that would be wise, Ms. Hartley said coldly, because if we come back into this room without a settlement offer, I am referring this to the district attorney for fraud investigation. The meeting dissolved. Mr. Sterling ushered my family out into the hallway. My mother was weeping openly now. Megan looked like she had been punched in the gut. Tyler was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. I sat in the chair, unable to move. You did it, Mr. Feld whispered. Audrey, we have them. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Mr. Sterling poked his head in. Can my client speak to Miss Griffin alone? Just for a moment in the hallway. Mr. Feld looked at me. You don't have to. I want to, I said. I stood up. My legs felt steady. I walked out into the hallway. My parents were standing by the window. Megan was sitting on a bench, her head in her hands. When I approached, my mother reached out for me. Audrey, I stepped back. Don't. Audrey, please, my father said. He looked old, suddenly, incredibly old. You have to understand, we were in debt. The business, the boat, we were underwater. Grandpa's money was the only way out. If we gave you 30%, we would have lost the house. We would have lost everything. I stared at him. So you decided to sacrifice me. You decided to tell the world I was crazy, so you could pay off your debts. We didn't think it would go this far, he pleaded. We thought you were happy with your life. You have your job. You have your apartment. We just wanted to keep the family afloat. The family? I repeated. You keep using that word, but I don't think you know what it means. We can settle, my mother said, wiping her eyes. We can give you a share, not 30%, but something significant. Please, Audrey. If this goes to trial, if the fraud comes out, your father could go to jail. We would be ruined. The family name, I said. Is that what you are worried about? The name? I looked at them. I looked at the people who had raised me, the people who had bought me ice cream, who had attended my graduation, who had smiled in Christmas photos, and I realized that I didn't hate them. I just didn't know them. They were strangers who shared my DNA. I felt the pull, the old pull, the urge to fix it, to say, okay, give me half, and let's forget it, to save them from ruin, to be the good daughter one last time. But then I thought about the video. She can scream all she wants. I thought about the anonymous email to HR, the promotion I lost, the years of self-doubt, the nights I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me. They hadn't just taken money. They had taken my time. They had taken my peace. I don't care about the family name, I said quietly. My mother flinched. I need time to think, I said. Mr. Feld will handle the numbers, but whatever happens, whether we settle or go to trial, I am done. Done. Megan looked up, her eyes red. What do you mean? I mean I am not your scapegoat anymore. I said, I am not your secret, and I am not your daughter. I looked at my father. You said you wanted to protect me. Well, I am protecting myself now. From you. I turned around. Audrey, Wait, my mother cried. I didn't wait. I walked back into the mediation room. I sat down next to Mr. Feld. What is the plan? He asked. I looked at the blank screen where my grandmother's face had been. I felt light. I felt clean. The plan, I said, is to take everything that Grandpa left me, every single cent, and then I am going to live a life they can't touch. I opened my notebook. I turned to a fresh page. It was empty. It was beautiful. Thank you for listening to Audrey's story. It is a painful journey to realize that the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones holding you back. But there is immense power in finding the truth and reclaiming your narrative. I would love to hear your thoughts on Audrey's decision. Do you think she should settle to spare her parents' prison, or should she take it all the way to trial? Please leave a comment below, telling me where you are listening from and what you would do in her shoes. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice and vindication. Your support means the world to me.